A poor security guard saved a trembling woman from swallowing sleeping pills inside a quiet Lagos pharmacy, but he had no idea the broken stranger he calmed with ordinary words was one of the richest CEOs in the country, a billionaire secretly collapsing behind her perfect public image. Ethan Cole was used to protecting gates, chasing away drunk troublemakers, and surviving night shifts with empty pockets, but nothing prepared him for the moment he noticed the elegant woman in black gripping a bottle of pills like her life depended on it. She looked wealthy, educated, untouchable. But her shaking fingers betrayed something terrifying. And when Ethan sat beside her and gently talked her out of destroying herself, the mysterious woman stared at him like he had just done something no doctor, no therapist, and no amount of money had been able to do for months. Become her antidote. But why was one of the richest CEOs hiding alone before sunrise like a woman running from her own life? Why did a billionaire businesswoman secretly fear the black car watching her from outside the pharmacy window? And why did Ethan feel strangely connected to a woman who was clearly lying about who she really was? At exactly 5:17 a.m., Ethan Cole signed out from his night shift at Crestview Heights Estate and rubbed his tired eyes as generators hummed across the quiet Lagos street. The sky was pale blue already, but the city had not fully awakened. Bread sellers arranged their trays. Danfo drivers argued loudly beside puddles near the junction. A newspaper vendor shouted headlines nobody cared enough to buy. Ethan adjusted the faded collar of his security uniform and checked his phone. 3 missed calls from Chloe. His younger sister never called repeatedly unless something was wrong. His chest tightened instantly. Hospital bills. Again. For a brief moment, frustration crossed his tired face, but it disappeared almost immediately. Ethan had mastered the dangerous art of swallowing suffering. Quietly. Life had trained him early. 5 years earlier, he had been one of the brightest engineering students at the University of Lagos. His lecturers believed he would someday leave Nigeria for international research programs. But dreams collapsed the same year his father suffered a stroke inside a mechanic workshop in Motion. The flashback still haunted him vividly sometimes. His father lying helplessly on the hospital bed. Machines beeping weakly. His mother secretly selling her wedding jewelry outside the hospital corridor. An 18-year-old Ethan standing there realizing intelligence meant nothing when poverty entered the family. He dropped out 3 months later. At first temporarily. Then permanently. Now at 28, he guarded estates built by rich men younger than him. Yet somehow, bitterness never fully consumed him. His late mother had prevented that. Before cancer took her 2 years earlier, she once held his hand beside her hospital bed and whispered, "Don't let hardship change your heart, Ethan. Poor people lose everything the day kindness leaves them." Since her death, that sentence followed him everywhere. As Ethan crossed toward the hospital pharmacy opposite the bus stop, he noticed a woman seated alone near the back cafe beside the medicine shelves. Something about her immediately felt wrong. Not physically. Emotionally. She wore simple black clothes, but the fabric was obviously expensive. Her posture carried quiet authority, the kind wealthy people unconsciously developed after years of being obeyed. Yet her face looked hollow beneath carefully applied makeup. And then Ethan noticed the sleeping pills in her hand. The woman stared at them too intensely. Not like a customer. Like someone negotiating with darkness. The pharmacist briefly disappeared into the storage room, leaving her alone. Her fingers trembled slightly. Ethan slowed his steps. Years of security work had sharpened his instincts toward danger people tried hiding. He noticed tiny details others ignored. Her untouched tea growing cold. The faint swelling around her eyes like someone who cried privately before leaving home. And most disturbingly, the silver wedding band she kept rubbing unconsciously. Not lovingly. Guiltily. Outside the pharmacy window, a black Lexus slowed briefly near the curb before moving again. The woman noticed it instantly. Fear flashed across her face before she quickly hid it. That single reaction planted a question in Ethan's mind. Who exactly was she hiding from? Without thinking further, he walked toward her table. "You've been staring at those pills like they personally offended you," he said softly. The woman looked up sharply. Her eyes were beautiful but exhausted. Cold but wounded. And you've been observing strangers before sunrise, she replied carefully. Ethan shrugged lightly. I'm a security guard. Suspicion is part of the job description. For the first time, the corner of her lips almost moved. Almost. But the sadness returned too quickly. Ethan sat slowly opposite her after noticing she did not object. Up close, he realized she smelled faintly of expensive perfume and hospital antiseptic. A strange combination. Cold tea usually means heavy thoughts, he said, nodding toward her untouched cup. I forgot it was there. That bad. Her eyes narrowed slightly. You always talk this much. Only when someone looks like they haven't slept in months. That sentence hit deeper than Ethan intended. Because she truly had not. For 8 months, Amelia Hart barely slept more than 2 hours nightly. The nightmares always returned. Victor collapsing inside the operating room. Doctor screaming his name. Blood-staining gloves. Her final argument with him hours before his death replaying endlessly. Slow down, Amelia. That was what her husband begged her that night. But Amelia chose another board meeting instead of dinner with him. And the guilt slowly destroyed her afterward. Now she sat inside a random Lagos pharmacy at dawn carrying sleeping pills she never intended to survive. Yet somehow this tired security guard interrupted that plan simply by noticing her pain. The woman quietly placed the pills back on the table. Ethan noticed immediately but pretended not to. What's your name? She asked after a long silence. Ethan. You always interfere in strangers' business, Ethan. Only the strangers who look like they are losing silent battles. For a second, emotion cracked through her controlled expression. Then vanished. She looked away quickly toward the pharmacy window again. The black Lexus was gone now. But her shoulders remained tense. Like someone used to being watched. Finally, she spoke quietly. Mia. Not Amelia Hart. Not the billionaire CEO whose face appeared on business magazines monthly. Just Mia. A safer name. A smaller identity. But as Ethan studied her trembling hands again, one strange thought settled heavily inside him. This woman looked like someone who had everything, yet carried herself like someone who had already lost the most important thing in her life. And neither of them realized their meeting that morning was about to expose deadly secrets, buried betrayals, stolen millions, and a conspiracy powerful enough to destroy lives. Or that the poor security guard sitting inside that quiet pharmacy would soon become the only person standing between the billionaire woman and complete destruction. The silence between Ethan and the woman strangely felt comfortable, but both of them knew it should not have. Outside, Lagos slowly awakened into chaos. Horns blared near the junction. Street hawkers dragged baskets across the roadside. The smell of roasted corn mixed with diesel smoke drifting through the pharmacy entrance. But inside the small cafe corner, everything felt disconnected from the world. Ethan noticed the woman's eyes constantly moving toward the glass window. Not casually. Carefully. Like someone expecting bad news. Or someone terrified of being recognized. You keep checking outside, Ethan said quietly. The woman adjusted her posture immediately. Habit. Dangerous habit. That line lingered heavily between them. For a brief second, she studied him again more carefully. Ethan did not speak like most people she met. There was intelligence beneath his tired appearance. Even the way he observed details reminded her painfully of Victor, her late husband used to notice tiny emotional shifts too. A flashback hit suddenly. Victor standing in their penthouse kitchen 1 year earlier, loosening his tie while watching Amelia answer emails during dinner. You do realize your company will survive one evening without you. Amelia never looked up from her laptop. And people's salaries survive because I don't relax. Victor sighed softly then. Sometimes I think you're afraid to stop moving. Back then, she dismissed the comment. Now she understood he had seen her breaking long before she did. You look far away, Ethan said. The woman blinked back to reality. Sorry. You don't have to apologize for thinking. A faint smile almost escaped her again. Dangerous. Because Amelia Hart had spent months avoiding emotional attachment to anyone. After Victor's death, every relationship around her became transactional. Lawyers, investors, board members, therapists. Everyone either feared her wealth or wanted something from her. But Ethan wanted nothing. That unsettled her most. You work night shifts every day, she asked. Most days. You look exhausted. That makes two of us. For the first time, she laughed softly. Small. Fragile. But real. Ethan noticed the sound seemed unfamiliar to her own ears. Then his phone buzzed again. Chloe. This time, he answered immediately. Ethan, his sister's shaky voice whispered. The hospital said if we don't complete payment today, they may stop treatment. His expression changed instantly. The woman noticed. And for the first time since they met, she saw the hidden weight beneath his calmness. Not weakness. Burden. Heavy enough to silently crush someone. Yet somehow he still sat here comforting strangers instead of himself. That disturbed her deeply. Because wealthy people around her had become cruel over far less suffering. But this poor security guard still carried kindness like something life had failed to steal from him completely. And Amelia suddenly realized something dangerous. She wanted to know more about him. Ethan ended the call slowly, but the tension in his face remained long after he lowered the phone. The woman noticed his fingers tightening briefly around the device before he forced himself to relax. Bad news, she asked carefully. Ethan hesitated. Normally, he hated discussing personal struggles with strangers. Poverty already embarrassed him enough. Talking about it made him feel even smaller. But something about Mia felt strangely easy. My sister's hospital bills, he admitted quietly. They are threatening to stop treatment. The woman's expression softened almost immediately. What's wrong with her? Kidney complications. He looked away toward the pharmacy shelves. She's 23. Final year nursing student. There was pride in his voice despite the exhaustion. The woman noticed it. You paid her school fees yourself. Ethan smiled faintly. Still pain. A painful flashback crossed his mind instantly. 3 years earlier, Chloe standing outside Unilag's admission office crying because she planned to reject admission after their mother's death. Ethan had secretly sold the last piece of land their father left behind just to keep her in school. He never told her. Even now, Chloe still believed scholarships covered everything. She must really love you, the woman said softly. Ethan chuckled weakly. She insults me daily. That unexpected response pulled another small laugh from her. And again, the sound surprised her. For months, Amelia's penthouse had remained painfully silent except for business calls and television noise she barely listened to. Even laughter inside her company meetings had begun irritating her because it reminded her how emotionally dead she had become. Yet here she was laughing beside a tired security guard she met less than an hour ago. It made no logical sense. And somehow, that frightened her. Outside the pharmacy, the same black Lexus returned briefly. This time, Ethan noticed the driver staring directly toward their table before driving away again. A strange uneasiness settled inside him. You know that car? He asked casually. The woman froze for half a second before recovering. No. But the lie arrived too quickly. Ethan noticed. Still, he chose not to press further. Years of hardship taught him that some wounds surfaced only when ready. At that same moment across Lagos Island, inside the glass headquarters of Hartwell Biotech, tension exploded inside a boardroom. Where is Amelia? A furious investor demanded. Leonard Briggs adjusted his expensive cufflinks calmly while pretending concern. She's emotionally overwhelmed lately. The room grew uneasy instantly. That was intentional. Leonard had spent months carefully planting doubt about Amelia's mental stability among shareholders. Not too aggressively. Just enough. Small comments. Subtle concerns. Quiet rumors. Because destroying powerful people worked better slowly. And Leonard needed Amelia weak long enough to finish covering the millions he secretly siphoned from Hartwell Biotech through fake pharmaceutical contracts. He had almost succeeded too. Until Amelia disappeared unexpectedly 3 days earlier. Back inside the pharmacy cafe, Amelia unconsciously rubbed her wedding ring again. Ethan noticed the gesture carefully now. Not romantic attachment. Guilt, like someone carrying unfinished pain. You lost someone, he said gently. Her eyes lifted sharply toward him. For the first time since they met, genuine vulnerability appeared openly on her face. And Ethan instantly realized he had touched the exact wound she spent months trying to hide from the world. The question lingered heavily between them. You lost someone. Amelia's fingers immediately stopped moving against the silver wedding band. For a brief second, her carefully controlled expression cracked, exposing raw pain underneath before she looked away toward the pharmacy window again. Most people avoided mentioning Victor around her now. Employees became awkward. Friends changed topics. Even therapists tiptoed around his name like grief was something fragile that might explode. But this poor security guard said it naturally. Without fear. Without pity. How did you know? She asked quietly. Ethan shrugged lightly. My mother used to touch her wedding ring like that after my father died. The answer hit her harder than expected. Because it carried understanding, not curiosity. A painful silence settled again. Then Amelia spoke softly for the first time about Victor to a complete stranger. He was a doctor. Not my husband. Not yet. Just a doctor. Ethan noticed the careful distance in her wording. He died, he asked gently. Her throat tightened instantly. 8 months had passed, but hearing the question still felt unreal. A flashback surged violently into her mind. Victor collapsing inside the operating room. Nurses screaming for assistance. Blood pressure monitors failing. And Amelia arriving too late, still wearing heels from a business dinner she chose over spending the evening with him. The guilt had never left afterward. He worked too much, she whispered finally. Ironically, the statement applied to both of them. Ethan leaned back quietly. My father too. She looked at him again. He ignored symptoms because treatment was expensive. By the time we found out how serious it was, Ethan paused. It was already too late. For a moment, their pain silently mirrored each other across the table. Different words. Different wealth. Same loss. Outside, dawn sunlight slowly entered the pharmacy windows, softening Amelia's exhausted face. Ethan noticed she looked younger when sadness left her eyes briefly. But something else also became obvious now. Despite dressing simply, nothing about her truly looked ordinary. Her wristwatch alone probably cost more than his yearly salary. Even the way she spoke carried elite education. Old money confidence. Ethan suddenly remembered the black Lexus again. And a strange thought quietly entered his mind. Who exactly was this woman? Before he could ask further, Amelia's phone vibrated sharply on the table. The screen lit up instantly. Nora, 12 missed calls. Amelia's face changed immediately. Fear. Not annoyance. Fear. She quickly silenced the phone. You're not going to answer? Ethan asked carefully. No. That's serious. Her jaw tightened slightly. You ever feel like everyone around you wants something from you? The question carried dangerous weight beneath it. Ethan studied her quietly before replying. Sometimes the loneliest people are the ones others think are strongest. That sentence froze her completely. Because Victor once told her almost the exact same thing during one of their worst arguments. Back then she ignored him. Now hearing it from Ethan felt almost unbearable. At that same moment, several floors above Lagos Island, Leonard Briggs opened a confidential file inside his office. Amelia Hart, psychological evaluation. He smiled slowly. Then picked up his phone. Find her, he said coldly. Before she destroys everything. Back inside the pharmacy cafe, Amelia suddenly realized something terrifying. For the first time in months. She felt safer beside a struggling security guard than inside her own billion-dollar world. Amelia checked the time suddenly and stood up too quickly, almost knocking over the untouched tea. "I should go," she said quietly. But her voice lacked conviction. Almost like part of her wanted Ethan to stop her. Instead, Ethan simply nodded respectfully. "All right." That calm response strangely disappointed her. For months, powerful men had constantly chased her attention. Investors begged for meetings. Politicians invited her to events. Journalists followed her everywhere. But Ethan did not cling to conversations. He let people breathe. And that made him different. As Amelia reached for her handbag, a small paper slipped out unnoticed onto the floor. Ethan bent quickly and picked it up. A hospital prescription sheet. But the name at the top froze him instantly. Amelia Hart. Chief Executive Officer, Hartwell Biotech. His eyes widened slightly before he looked up at her. For one dangerous second, silence swallowed everything. Amelia saw the paper in his hand and her entire body stiffened. The secret was gone. After weeks of hiding from the world beneath ordinary clothes and fake names, the truth now sat openly between them. Ethan slowly looked from the paper back to her face. "You're Amelia Hart." Not the Amelia Hart. Just quiet disbelief. The billionaire CEO stared at him without answering immediately. 1,000 fears rushed through her mind at once. Now he would change. That was what always happened. People became greedy the moment they discovered her identity. Or fearful. Or fake. Even Victor once warned her about it during the early days of Hartwell Biotech. "Money changes the way people look at you," he told her years earlier while helping her move into their first office. "One day you won't know who actually sees Amelia anymore." At the time, she laughed it off. Now she understood exactly what he meant. Finally, Amelia took a slow breath. Yes. His mind raced rapidly now, connecting dozens of strange details from earlier. The expensive watch. The black Lexus. The guarded behavior. The phone calls. Suddenly everything made sense. "You own Hartwell Biotech," he asked carefully. Amelia nodded once. The same company Ethan saw constantly on television commercials and hospital buildings across Nigeria. One of the biggest pharmaceutical companies in West Africa. And the woman sitting before him was worth more money than he could imagine. Yet she looked emotionally destroyed. The contrast unsettled him deeply. "I didn't tell you because I needed," Amelia paused carefully, struggling for the right words. "I needed someone to speak to me normally." Ethan remained quiet. Not angry. Just processing. "You thought I would treat you differently?" Her eyes lowered slightly. "Yes." That honest answer hit Ethan unexpectedly hard. Because beneath all the wealth and status sitting before him was simply a lonely woman terrified of losing genuine human connection. Outside the pharmacy window, the black Lexus returned again. But this time, Ethan noticed something new. The driver lifted a phone and appeared to take a picture toward their table. Ethan's instincts sharpened instantly. "That car's following you," he said quietly. Amelia's face drained of color. And for the first time since they met, Ethan saw genuine fear completely overpower her carefully built composure. Amelia immediately looked toward the pharmacy window, but the black Lexus drove off before she could clearly see the driver. Still, the damage was done. Fear settled visibly across her face. Not ordinary fear. The kind built from months of pressure, betrayal, and emotional exhaustion. Ethan noticed her breathing becoming uneven again. Small signs. Tight shoulders. Shaking fingers. Eyes losing focus. He remembered the sleeping pills instantly. "Mia," he stopped himself and corrected softly, "Amelia." She closed her eyes briefly after hearing her real name from him for the first time. Almost like the disguise she had been hiding behind finally shattered completely. "You're safe," Ethan said carefully. That sentence nearly broke her. Because for months, nobody around Amelia spoke to her like a human being anymore. Executives spoke to her like a machine. Investors treated her like a walking fortune. Employees feared her authority. But Ethan spoke like someone trying to protect a wounded person. Not impress a billionaire. They found me faster than I expected, she whispered. Ethan frowned slightly. Who? Amelia hesitated. A flashback rushed painfully into her mind. 3 months earlier. Hartwell Biotech boardroom. Leonard Briggs calmly sliding financial documents across the table while subtly questioning Amelia's decisions in front of investors. Perhaps you should consider taking temporary leave, he suggested gently that day. The room had gone silent instantly. At first, the comment sounded caring. But Amelia noticed something terrifying afterward. Several board members already knew details about her panic attacks. Private medical information. Someone inside her inner circle had been leaking information deliberately. Since then, paranoia slowly consumed her. I don't know who I can trust anymore, she admitted quietly. Ethan listened carefully without interrupting. That alone comforted her strangely. Most wealthy people around Amelia constantly rushed conversations because they always wanted control. Ethan simply listened like her emotions mattered. You think someone close to you is trying to hurt you? He finally asked. Amelia gave a bitter laugh. When you're rich enough, people don't always attack you directly. That line carried painful experience behind it. Ethan noticed. Before he could respond, Amelia's phone rang again. Nora. This time, she answered. Where are you? Nora whispered urgently from the other end. Leonard is telling shareholders you're mentally unstable. They are pushing for emergency control of the company. Amelia's face hardened instantly. Ethan watched the transformation carefully. The broken woman from earlier suddenly disappeared. In her place stood someone powerful. Dangerous even. I handle Leonard, Amelia replied coldly. No, Nora warned quickly. You don't understand. Someone leaked photos of you leaving a psychiatric clinic last month. The board is panicking. Ethan's eyes narrowed slightly after overhearing that. So that explained the fear. The hiding. The pills. After the call ended, Amelia stared silently at the table for several seconds. Then she whispered something so softly Ethan almost missed it. I built that company from nothing with my husband. A tear escaped before she quickly wiped it away angrily. And now they're trying to erase me from it while pretending they care about my health. Ethan studied her quietly. Then asked the one question nobody else around her seemed willing to ask honestly. Did you really want those pills this morning? Amelia froze completely. Because beneath the billion-dollar empire, beneath the designer clothes, beneath the powerful CEO image, that was the real question she had been avoiding for months. And for the first time, she didn't know how to answer it. Amelia stared at the table for several long seconds after Ethan's question. Did you really want those pills this morning? Outside, morning traffic grew louder across the Lagos street, but inside the pharmacy cafe, the silence between them felt painfully intimate. Finally, Amelia exhaled shakily. I don't know anymore. It was the first completely honest thing she had said all morning. Not to investors. Not to therapists. Not to herself. Ethan noticed the exhaustion behind her voice immediately. It sounded deeper than sadness. Like someone tired of carrying invisible weight every single day. A flashback surfaced quietly in Amelia's mind. 6 months earlier. She stood alone inside the enormous penthouse she once shared with Victor. The dining table remained untouched exactly as he left it. His reading glasses still rested beside medical journals near the couch. At first she preserved everything because grief convinced her removing his belongings meant betraying him. But slowly the apartment transformed into a museum of guilt. She stopped inviting visitors. Stopped opening curtains. Stopped sleeping in their bedroom entirely. Most nights she sat awake watching old voicemail recordings of Victor's voice until sunrise. And every morning afterward, she still went to work pretending strength. You know what scares me most? Amelia watched Ethan walk toward the pharmacy exit, but something in her chest tightened in a way she couldn't ignore. For months, people had entered her life with agendas. Lawyers with contracts. Board members with warnings. Doctors with diagnoses. Even friends with expectations. But Ethan left like someone who had given something priceless without asking for anything in return. That was unfamiliar. And dangerous. Outside, Lagos sunlight had fully broken through now, turning the street into a moving wave of noise, heat, and motion. Ethan adjusted his security cap and began walking toward the bus stop, already mentally calculating how to manage his sister's hospital situation. Then his phone rang again. Unknown number. He hesitated before answering. Hello. A calm male voice replied instantly. You were seen with Amelia Hart this morning. Ethan stopped walking. His instincts sharpened immediately. Who is this? A short silence followed. Someone trying to save you from getting involved in things you don't understand. The line cut off. Ethan stared at the phone for a moment, then slowly looked back toward the pharmacy. Amelia was still inside. But now she wasn't alone anymore. From the opposite side of the street, a man in a suit stood near a parked car, pretending to check his watch while clearly observing the building. Another observer. Ethan exhaled slowly. Something was wrong. Meanwhile, inside Hartwell Biotech headquarters, Amelia had just arrived through a private entrance arranged by Nora. The moment she stepped inside the boardroom, silence filled the space. Leonard Briggs stood first, wearing his signature calm smile. Amelia, he said warmly, as if nothing had changed. We were beginning to worry. But Amelia noticed something instantly. Too many eyes avoided hers. Too many people looked uncomfortable. A stack of documents was already placed in front of her seat. Nora leaned closer and whispered quickly. They called an emergency shareholder review meeting. They want to assess your mental stability. Amelia's face hardened slightly. Then Leonard spoke again, this time more carefully. We are concerned about your recent, emotional instability. Especially after the leaked clinic report. That sentence landed like a trap being closed. Amelia paused. Clinic report. Her mind raced immediately. She had never authorized any public access to her medical visits. That information was supposed to be sealed. Which meant someone inside her company was feeding them. Her eyes slowly lifted toward Leonard. And for the first time, she saw it clearly. Not concern. Not professionalism. Calculation. And something far worse. Control. At that exact moment, Ethan stood outside the pharmacy staring at the same black Lexus from earlier, now parked again across the street. The driver wasn't leaving this time. Instead, the window rolled down slightly. A camera flash flickered briefly toward him. Ethan's jaw tightened. He wasn't just being watched. He was being recorded. And suddenly, everything clicked. This wasn't random. His encounter with Amelia was already being monitored. Back inside the boardroom, Leonard slid a final document forward. Pending board resolution for temporary CEO suspension, he said smoothly. Amelia looked at the paper. Then at the faces around the table. And realized something chilling. This wasn't a discussion. It was an execution plan. Amelia didn't speak immediately. Her eyes remained locked on the suspension document, but her mind was no longer inside the boardroom. It had gone somewhere colder. Sharper. Dangerous. A flashback surfaced violently. 2 years earlier. Victor standing beside her in a private lab at Hartwell Biotech, reviewing early vaccine trial data. You trust Leonard too easily, he had warned calmly. Amelia had laughed back then. Leonard has been with us since the beginning. Victor didn't laugh. Instead, he pointed at a line in the financial report. Then why does he approve expenses that don't match actual research output? Amelia remembered brushing it off. She was building an empire. She didn't have time for suspicion. But Victor did. He always noticed what others ignored. Now sitting in the boardroom, Amelia felt something worse than fear. Regret. Leonard's voice pulled her back. We can settle this quietly, Amelia. A temporary medical leave will protect your image. Protect my image, she repeated slowly. Yes. The shareholders are worried. Amelia finally looked up fully. And the room felt different immediately. Because something in her expression had changed. No longer fragile. No longer confused. Controlled again. But in a different way. A dangerous way. You mean you are worried, she said softly. A few board members shifted uncomfortably. Leonard smiled faintly. That's not. You've been waiting for this moment, Amelia interrupted. Silence dropped. Even Nora held her breath. Amelia slowly stood up. You leaked my clinic records. Leonard's expression barely changed, but his eyes sharpened slightly. That's a serious accusation. You've been preparing shareholders against me for months, she continued calmly. You used my grief. My health. My private life. A pause. Then her voice lowered. And now you want to take my company. The room stiffened instantly. Leonard leaned back slightly. Amelia, you are not stable right now. I was stable when I built Hardware Biotech from nothing with Victor, she cut in sharply. That name shifted the atmosphere. Victor Hart. Everyone knew him. The brilliant surgeon. The co-founder whose sudden death was still surrounded by unanswered questions. Amelia's voice softened slightly. And you were already here, moving numbers around before he died. That sentence landed differently. Nora looked up quickly. Leonard's calm mask flickered for the first time. Outside the building, Ethan was still staring at the black Lexus when his phone rang again. This time, it was Chloe. Ethan, her voice trembled. They said if we don't pay by today, I'll be discharged. Ethan closed his eyes briefly. Then something strange happened. A car door opened behind him. The same man from earlier stepped out. Suit. Professional posture. Cold eyes. You shouldn't be near her, the man said. Ethan turned slowly. Near who? The man studied him carefully. Amelia Hart. That name confirmed everything. Ethan wasn't imagining it anymore. This was connected. His encounter. The surveillance. The calls. All of it. Inside the boardroom, Amelia finally picked up the pen placed in front of her. Leonard watched carefully. A faint smile returned. She was signing. But then, Amelia flipped the document slightly. Read every page. And stopped. Because hidden inside the suspension agreement was something else. A clause transferring emergency voting power to Leonard Briggs. Not temporary leave. A silent takeover. Amelia's grip tightened slightly on the pen. And for the first time since Victor died, she smiled. Not warmly. Not softly. Coldly. Interesting, she whispered. Amelia's pen hovered just above the paper. The boardroom was so quiet now that even breathing felt like a betrayal. Leonard Briggs watched her carefully, his calm smile still fixed in place, but his eyes betrayed impatience for the first time. Is there a problem? He asked gently. Amelia didn't look up immediately. Instead, she slowly traced the hidden clause again. Emergency voting transfer. Full operational control shift. Not temporary suspension. A silent corporate assassination disguised as concern. Then she exhaled. Softly. Almost amused. You've been very patient, she said finally. Leonard tilted his head. I'm only trying to protect the company. Amelia nodded slightly. Yes, that's what Victor said too when he first suspected you. That name dropped like a stone into water. Victor Hart. The room shifted instantly. Nora's eyes widened. Leonard's smile tightened just slightly. Amelia stood fully now. And for the first time in months, she looked completely awake. Not broken. Not grieving. Present. Dangerously present. You didn't just leak my medical records, she continued calmly. You've been feeding shareholders false performance reports for over a year. Leonard chuckled lightly. That's a serious accusation without proof. Amelia finally looked directly at him. And what she said next changed everything. Victor found your financial trail 3 days before he died. Silence. Total silence. Even air felt heavier. Ethan's world, meanwhile, was collapsing in a different direction outside the pharmacy. The suited man had now stepped closer. You're interfering in something bigger than you, he said coldly. Ethan narrowed his eyes. Then explain it. The man hesitated. Amelia Hart is not just a CEO. She is the last obstacle between Leonard Briggs and full control of Hartwell Biotech. Ethan froze slightly. Hartwell Biotech. Ethan froze slightly. Hartwell Biotech. Somia. Amelia wasn't just wealthy. She was central to something far bigger. Inside the boardroom, Amelia continued speaking, her voice steady now. Victor didn't die from natural causes. Gasps erupted instantly. Nora stood up. What? Leonard's expression finally cracked completely. Amelia turned slightly, holding his gaze. He was silenced because he discovered missing funds tied to you. Leonard slowly leaned forward. His voice dropped. This is dangerous territory, Amelia. But she didn't flinch. Instead, she slid a small encrypted flash drive onto the table. Victor backed everything up. The room erupted into chaos instantly. Nora rushed forward. Amelia, that could destroy him. Amelia finished calmly. She looked at Leonard again. No. It will expose him. At that exact moment, Ethan outside made a decision. He pulled out his phone and called Amelia's number. It rang once. Twice. Inside the boardroom, Amelia saw Ethan's name flash on her screen. She hesitated. Then answered. Ethan. His voice came urgent. They're watching you. Don't trust anyone in that room. Amelia closed her eyes briefly. Then opened them again. And looked directly at Leonard Briggs. I already don't. She pressed the button on the flash drive. The boardroom screens flickered. Files appeared. Transactions. Audio recordings. Victor's voice. And Leonard's voice answering him. The room exploded into chaos. Leonard stood abruptly. This is illegal. Amelia cut him off. No. What's illegal is what you did to my husband. Outside the building, Ethan finally understood. This wasn't just a woman in crisis. This was a war. And he was already standing in the middle of it. Amelia slowly walked toward the boardroom exit as alarms began to sound in the building. Before leaving, she paused. And for the first time, she spoke softly into the phone still connected to Ethan. Don't disappear on me now. Ethan closed his eyes briefly. Then replied. I'm already in too deep. And as security rushed through the corridors of Hartwell Biotech, Leonard Briggs whispered into his phone from the chaos. Find the security guard. Now. Because the antidote he never expected had just become the biggest threat to everything he built.